Here I am. Hello, everybody. Here I am. Um, I'm glad I've got a happy face. There was a lot of drama with at my birth that I had developed an infection in my right leg, and they removed the infection. They figured it got in there from a dirty hypodermic needle. Anyhow, it was quite a drama, but I finally got home, and here is our first house in Alameda. This is my beautiful mother holding me. And anyhow, and this is my wonderful grandfather with my wonderful sister, Junie, both of them holding me. This is mom and dad in Annapolis when dad was stationed there during the war. This is me with Flicky, which was Gongi and Gramps' um, dog. This is me at the Harris's cabin down on the San Lorenzo River on the little beach there below the cabin, and that's Junie playing with me, mom, dad, Junie, and me. That was a wonderful place to be. This is dad, probably the only picture I ever had of him actually giving me a kiss. This is at Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. This is also Golden Gate Park in San Francisco with Junie and dad. Me and dad again next to the little zoo they had there at the park. Mom doing a little gardening at the house on Lincoln Street in Alameda, the house you saw previously. This is Gongi and Gramps, mom's parents, who lived right around the corner from us in Alameda. And this is at the house in Alameda again with Junie, and I don't know who her friend was. This is me. You'll notice the lift I have on my right leg to make up for the difference in the length of my legs. Here I am looking at a picture book in my bedroom. Junie and me again here at the Harris's cabin in Santa Cruz. Dad, me and Junie again at the Harris's cabin in Santa Cruz. Probably Easter morning, going to church. I had a little navy coat on. Same morning with dad. Same morning. Mom reading to me at the nursery school, which was 1 block away from our house on Lincoln Street in Alameda. She used to take me there in a little red radio flyer wagon and pull me there. And then I think she donated time there to help out. This is dad with his family in Antioch, California, with his sister and his mother. That's me showing Santa Claus my open mouth and seeing nothing coming out of it. Junie riding on the ferry from Berkeley to San Francisco. This is me and Steve Pearson um, at an amusement park in San Francisco. This is our home in Palo Alto after we left Alameda. This is back in Alameda in the backyard again, sitting in a little bouncy chair. This again is the house in Eichler home in Palo Alto. We only stayed there, I think, 2 years, and the weather was not very comfortable. So we've eventually we'll move to Los Altos from this house, but I still remember being there, and that was can you believe that house only cost $12,000 and now probably well over a million. This is all of us at Lake Tahoe at a rented cabin overlooking the lake. This is Dongy and Gramps again in their backyard in Alameda. Here, Mom and me on a beach overlooking Lake Tahoe. This was the house I really grew up in on Leonello Street, I think 930 Leonello. That house had an orchard still in the backyard from where it was carved out of the fruit orchard. The house came with a little playhouse in the backyard, which was modeled after the real house. This is the street the house was on. It was a dead end street. At the end of the street, you can see there's an orchard there, long gone now. I think this is my first picture, possibly taken when I first started kindergarten or first grade. Here we are in Yosemite feeding the deer. As I recall, I got butted by one. Here's a little trailer that I built, and Dad helped make a little coaster wagon that I hooked it up to. Here's me and Gramps holding our cat Jojo. Gramps helped me build, or Gramps did build this little, I don't know whether it was going to be a rabbit cage or what. Again, this is my little trailer that I had built. That's Linda, the little girl who lived next door to us on Leonel. This is Diane, Susie, and Wendy, who lived on the other side of our house. And this is in the backyard. Here I am after my first surgery on my leg, giving me an artificial hip that was installed in me. And I was stuck in that wheelchair for I don't know how long. This is my second grade teacher with my second grade friends, Tyke Morris, Nancy Gilbert. And this is again one of my favorite teachers, Mrs. Rivetto. This was our second grade class. And as you might guess, this was Halloween. This is Mitty, one of our longest lived cats. Mitty lived to be 13 years old. He was a sweet kitty. Here's Junie at Yosemite on Glacier Point, overlooking Half Dome. Again, here's my sister and I in front of our house on Leonello. Here we are in Placerville on our way back from Lake Tahoe and enjoying the warm river. This was in Columbia in the Motherlode country. Here's Junie, Steve, John, and I at Yosemite, which Gongi and Gramps took us there about every other year. This was taken right at the foot of Yosemite Falls. This picture was taken, I think, on my 10th birthday. I wanted to be in Yosemite. And you can see the snow. Again, here's Gramps, Steve, John, and I, and Junie. Here are Steve, John, and I, probably in 1960. We had pedaled our bikes all the way to the top of Glacier Point. Took us all day. It was a 3,000-foot climb. And we pedaled all the way up there and spent the night there sleeping and then rode down the next day. Some of our best memories are with Gongi and Gramps, who took us to Yosemite just about every other year for about 6 years or more. Here's Steve, John, and at Brackney on the dam, overlooking the lake we had behind the dam at Brackney. This is diving off the dam, all three of us. Here I am, I think, in my 7th or 8th grade graduation. Again, my 8th grade graduation. I think I had braces on my teeth there. Here we are, a family dinner, Steve, John, Aunt Jean, mom, dad, having a picnic lunch at the back of our house on Leonello. Again, Steve, John, and I at Brackney on the beach. This rowboat was always brought down for me every year. I used to enjoy getting in that first thing in the morning and rowing up the river. I love that. Here we are with our new 1955 Chevy, and dad treated mom special with white wall tires on it. Think I here I am with my buck teeth and the first, second, third teeth are looking a little better here. I'm much older. There we go, all trimmed up. This was my high school graduation picture. I think I was 17 or 18, and this is Junie's high school graduation picture. We both graduated from brand new high school. She from Los Altos High, me from Awalt High in Los Altos. Here we are, the campsite with Gongi in Yosemite. Here's President Kennedy, which was a total surprise to us coming through Yosemite. This is dad's father, Grandpa Haefner, in front of the house in Palo Alto before we had moved, was still being built then. Here's Gongi, mom, Junie, and I. I'm holding Mitty. Here's probably one of the last pictures of Gongi. She had terminal cancer in this picture, and that was taken in Los Altos at our Leonello house. Here's Junie with myself and her friend Charlotte and Santa Cruz on the boardwalk. This is our backyard long after the orchard had been taken out and homes had been put in. The orchard slowly disappeared as um, real estate became more valuable and homes went in. That was our little playhouse. This was our 1961 Ford Falcon. Didn't last very long. It wasn't very well built, but it was better than the Volkswagen we had before that. Notice how big the trees are now in front of the house on Leonello. I really loved that house. I used to enjoy mowing the lawn and taking care of the yard. This is a city that I built in between the seventh and eighth grade, which was entered into a science fair. This is Eileen Tonkin and John Pearson at a backyard party I had. This is again that party with my friends, probably about the only party I ever had at our house on Leonello. This is Art Brown, our minister at the Presbyterian Church, and this is a painting I did for him of a priest. This is my friend Donna Ray and her Jeep, which we used to run around in. This is my first grade class, Mrs. Bendingner. I'm the one in the dead center there. This is my second grade class with Mrs. Rivetto. And Nancy Gilbert was my girlfriend there. At least that's the one I want. This is my third grade class, Mrs. Stevenson, 1956. This is my fourth grade class, Mrs. Chu, remember? Fifth grade class, I forget the teacher's name, and I'm in the dead center there. And this is my sixth grade class, Mr. Christensen's group. And that was the end of my years in elementary school. 1964, moved from Los Altos Hills to Los Altos Hills. Will had a beautiful home overlooking the hills. Steve and John lived less than a mile away from us there. Dad loved that house. We all loved that house. A beautiful view. It doesn't exist anymore. It was torn down to put up a big mansion, which a lot of the modest homes were torn down. This is my 1948 Dodge that I had bought from Grongi and Gramps. It was his second car, and I loved that car and totally rehabbed it. This is a Roy's Chevron on El Camino that I worked at for a couple of years while I was still going to college. This is Roy with his proud Rambler ambassador. This is a portrait I did of Roy from a sketch I had done of him sitting at the station. This is Roy hard at work, um, doing what he does best, which is resting his brain. Anyway, as my friends working with me at Lockheed, that would have been 1968. This was my first fiancee, Kathy O'Brien. That's a portrait I did of her behind me. This again is the whole family with Kathy O'Brien, and that's in Los Altos Hills with a mural that was up on the wall. This is another painting I did of Kathy. Turned out she was not quite the one for me. This was her in my 56 Cadillac. And she was the girl that was with me when I built the cabin in Santa Cruz, and this is the lumber arriving there. She took a day off from school and went up there with me. And this is her leaning on the foundation of the cabin I was building in on Big Basin Road in Santa Cruz. This is me building the floor of that cabin with the view in the background. And this is the completion of it. And just a little one-room cabin, but I was really proud of it. This again is Gramps with Kathy and myself. And Gramps when he remarried. This is John and I at Lake Louise in Canada. This is me faking that I'm going to dive into freezing cold water there. I took a vacation in '68 with John, and we drove all the way up to Banff, Canada in the Cadillac to explore the Canadian country, which I'd always wanted to see. Again, this is Canada. We're going to camp out each night. Never did because every night it rained every night, so we spent the night in hotels. But it was a beautiful trip. This is in Victoria, Canada, on our way back. This is on the ferry going from Victoria to Victoria Island. John, this is again the ferry that we took. And this is on Victoria Island before we crossed over to Washington. Again, another picture of Canada, not in sequence to that. That was actually on the way to Canada. This is our third house on Los Altos Avenue in Los Altos after we left Los Altos Hills. This is me standing in Loca in Yosemite. These are my friends, Patty and Arby Claire and their son, Sean, who introduced me to Autobiography of a Yogi in 1968. This is a portrait I did of them. This again is Patty and Arby. They probably were the most influential people I had to getting on the spiritual path. All right, went to San Jose State and were laid off from Lockheed, and Dad said, "If you give up the cabin, I'll finance you to go back to college." So I entered San Jose State. That's a dormitory, what we call Waffle Tower at San Jose State. That's the view I had from my 10th floor window of the San Jose. This is my recreation class. I majored in recreation, and one of the weekends we went on a camping trip. This was a dance I organized, which was part of my requirement. This is a graveyard I used to go to in San Jose to think and kind of meditate in. It had wild peacocks running around it, and I used to ride my bike from the campus over to the graveyard, and used to do a lot of thinking and writing there at the graveyard. This is Camp Harmon, where I went during the summer and worked as a camp counselor along with 3 of the other people that were, um, San Jose State students, and then these were the campers. They were all handicapped that we were in charge of. We had 5 different sessions with different kids in each session. This is me just having a wild time in one of the cabins. I probably learned more about humanity at that camp than I did anywhere else. This is my friend Chris, who I was the second girl I was engaged to. This is her driving back from Milledgeville, Georgia, taking her back home after she had spent 2 weeks with me in Milledgeville. This is the third girl I was engaged to, Jill, um, which I had met when I was setting up a recreation program at a halfway house I was working at. And Carol, the one on the far right, was in charge of it. That's her there in the middle. And these were men who were outpatients from Agnew State Hospital. And my job was to set up a recreation program that would be ongoing after I left. For the men. This was the house. It was only several blocks away from the college campus. I lived in the upstairs of the garage, and this is my little private room that I had upstairs above the garage, which was great for when my fiance would come and stay with me there. Had a little kitchen and everything, and I really enjoyed that time. This is the main house where all the men lived. Carol would go out and do the shopping and prepare the meals. After I graduated, I took a part-time job at the Salvation Army as a playground director, which was still also in San Jose. I was also the bus driver, and these were all the kids that were part of the community playground with the Salvation Army. And I took them on a camping trip in that bus into the Santa Cruz Mountains. Here I am, the beginning of my long trip after graduation to Milledgeville, Georgia on my little motorbike. Little motorcycle I got for $125, wouldn't go faster than 40 miles an hour, but took me 13 days, but I traveled across the whole country and slept under bushes at night. I only had $100 to my name, and I I finally arrived there to the shock of Steve Pearson, who was already working at Milledgeville State Hospital. When I got there, I got a job at a center for retarded children. This was the view from the house that I rented for a whole $55 a month um, in Milledgeville while working at the Milledgeville Center for the Retarded Children and Adults. I was a bus driver there too. The lady on the left was my worker. These were some of the children that I worked with at the center, and this was on a field trip, taking them around, showing them historical places around Milledgeville. This again was in the classroom. This was my first wife, Frida, who I met at the center. This is a portrait I did of her. Here's Frida. This is a trailer our first house, so to speak, that we lived in Ringgold, Georgia. Moved from Milledgeville to Ringgold after Frida and I were married and lived next door to her grandmother. Here's Steve Pearson. Here's Frida when she was pregnant with Ben. And this was in North Georgia, 10 miles from Chattanooga. This was our house, which I was very proud of. A double wide house on our own land and a porch that I added on to the back of it. The rock wall at the base there, I slowly built that rock wall and I built the porch. Here's Ben pulling his little wagon. It's about winter time. And here's Ben when we first moved into this double wide trailer that we had. Here's Ben, the last part of 1960. Oh no, 76, 77. Here's me and Ben. That last picture was of Dad with Ben when mom and dad came out to visit us there. Here's when Frida and I flew home for Christmas. This was her introduction to mom and dad. These are just portraits that I did of friends from pencil sketches. This is yours truly. This is kind of a caricature of myself. This is a girlfriend that I had, and I was at Foothill College, put everything in that painting I did of Neuschwanstein Castle. This is a painting I did of me holding Mitty, a cat that I had for 13 years. Again, another caricature I had done of myself, kind of making a face. This is a girl that got me started doing portrait painting. Her name was Susan Brockmeyer, which I thought was one of the prettiest girls in school. She posed for me. This was our house taken in Los Altos Hills, the back porch. This is another girl that I dated for about 3 or 4 years, Leslie Brunk. I did a picture of her. This is me and Leslie here. And the relationship never went anywhere, but she was available to go out, but nothing ever came of it. I did probably more portraits of her than I did of anybody. This was one of the better ones I did of her. Here's another one I did of her. I kind of figured that if I couldn't have a physical relationship with them by doing the portraits, I was able to have a kind of a relationship with them just by doing the paintings. Again, Leslie in the woods. I gave all these paintings, I think, to her. This is a caricature I did of her. I think this kind of showed her true nature. She was kind of a hard person to get along with. Oh, this was a date that I had with Leslie, Steve, John, and their respective girls' friends at the time. This is a trip I took with Leslie to my new bought Thunderbird. This is me and Letitia. She was a friend that I met in the recreation program at San Jose State. This again is me and Letitia. We hitchhiked all the way from San Francisco all the way up to Eureka and spent time with Patty and Arby. This is a portrait I did of her. This is Roxanne, the nurse at the handicap Easter Seal camp that I dated for a while, and a Porsche that a friend of mine loaned to me. This was my philosophy teacher at Foothill College, who I was always impressed with. And this is a picture of what an old man would look like enjoying retirement. This is one of my coworkers that worked at Roy's Chevron with me that I did. This was a girl that I just made up and painted, and believe it or not, I actually found a girl that looked just like that and gave it to her. This is an abstract that I did from a reflection of off the bumper of my '48 Dodge. And this is just a made-up picture of a sailing ship. I think I painted that when I lived in, Milledgeville. This one I painted when I lived in Milledgeville for a craft fair. This was a fountain in Savannah, a central fountain, a very famous fountain in Savannah, Georgia. Oh, again, here's, this one, Tanya. You see myself there on the left. This was another girl that worked at the Easter Seal Camp with me that I did a portrait of, and another one, and another. I don't remember all their names. And another one. Girl I went out with once. I think she was engaged. This is a kind of a made up, cutesy kind of a picture. This is one of the first pictures of me and Ben. Frida and I were getting a divorce, or were divorced, and Ben and I moved to Encinitas. Here's Brad with brother Dharmananda at his, oh, this is me and Lisa on one of our first dates up to Mount Palomar. Again, me and Lisa, and Roaring Camp in Santa Cruz. This was the first trip that me and Lisa took with Ben to meet my parents. Here's another picture of Lisa. We were already engaged. She's looking beautiful there. I was so proud of her. Here's Lisa with her father just a month or two before he passed on. It's a wonderful picture. Here's Lisa, Ben, uh, mom, and Lisa's dad, Dottie, and Deck, and my mother in this picture, and then Ruth, who was Deck's mother. Here's Terry Dunn, her daughter, and Ben, and me and Lisa at top of Mount Palomar. Here's Ben right next to our townhouse on 3rd Street in Encinitas with his friends. Here's Ben in front of Mount Washington. And here's Ben sitting on the Golden Lotus steps where I had proposed marriage to Lisa, where she accepted marriage. And then here's Lisa with John Hupp. She was babysitting him, and Lisa had had surgery done on her foot, and she was recovering from that. Here's Ben and Lisa in Yosemite. We went there quite often. Here's Pete with John Hupp and Maha and Robin. Here's a little tractor cake Lisa made for Ben for his 10th birthday. He was so proud of that. And this was riding on 2nd Street right in front of the temple there on a 3-wheel bike. Here's our cat, Cootsie, who was in our townhouse there on 3rd Street. Here's Dottie. This is our wedding. This was our $300 wedding. Lisa got the wedding dress for $10. Ben walked Lisa down the aisle since her father had passed on several weeks before the wedding. This is Lisa's sister in the middle and her friends on either side. This is our minister, Brother Santoshananda, who married us October 30th, 1982 at the Encinitas Temple. And here is the conclusion of the vows. And here's the wedding party. Lisa with her sister and her 4 nieces and nephews, and Ben. There's Bodie, Wendy, and Trinity, and Ben. Here's Lisa and her best friend Thora, me and Ben. Lisa made that cake from scratch. Here's the family, my mom and dad, myself, Lisa, Dottie, Ruth, Lisa's sister. Here's Lisa, Robin, and I standing on the Golden Lotus steps right after the wedding. Here's Grandpa on Los Altos Avenue holding Tricia. And this is at Tricia's baptism right outside the church on 2nd Street in Encinitas. This is Tricia walking up the driveway at Mount Washington. This was our house that we moved to from 2nd Street into a trailer park in Guatai. It was a trailer. We weren't there very long. And we've finally were making enough money. We got a contract with Trader Joe's to sell our Heffy candies, and we were able to move back to Encinitas. But while we were there, we enjoyed the country. Here's Lisa Baja with Jay, her husband, and Bernadette, me, Thora, Sharon Schwartz. Here's a knitted Afghan Lisa made for my dad on his birthday. And this is my dad's birthday that we celebrated on Melba Avenue. We moved into a townhouse there. Well, I guess it was my mom's birthday. This is dad with his dedicated redwood tree in Big Basin State Park. This was our first house in Tyler Foote, Nevada City, and we're very proud of it. It was everything we dreamed of, being in the woods. We were about 3 or 4 miles outside of Nevada City on Tyler Foote Road, couple of miles down from Kriyananda's place. And the interior of the house. It had a wood-burning stove. And before we moved out, we had the snowstorm of a century there, and we're stuck in it with no power for about a week. Anyhow, this is before the snowstorm. Here was probably the first snows we had there with Tricia and Elizabeth. This was our bedroom in that house. We had, I think, about 2 acres there. Here's John, Tricia, Elizabeth, and Mira. These are dolls that I guess Tricia got for her birthday. This is summertime, the same house there on Tyler Foote Road. This is the kitchen in that house. We closed off one of the rooms to make a bedroom for the girls. And then I closed in the back porch there on the right, you can see, was a carport, and I closed it in to make another room in the house for the kids to play in. This was one of the cats we had. Here again is Tricia straightening out Elizabeth's hair. And this was a Doughboy pool that I bought and situated there just below the house with a deck wrapping around it and childproofing the whole pool with wire all around it. It was really a nice setup. This is out on the added on room, which was a carport that I made a playroom. This was at their school in Bangor. No, I'm sorry, that was Grass Valley, or Nevada City, I should say. This is the apartment house we lived in before we bought a house in Nevada City. This is downtown Nevada City. This is the house that Robin and Pete and her kids lived in, and then they sold it to my mom and dad in Chicago Park. This was our second house. We sold the house, made quite a bit of profit on the house in Tyler Foot Road, and bought this place about 15 miles from it in Bangor um, for a fraction of what we had originally bought the other house for. It had a nice doughboy pool. It had a wood stove. It was on 5 beautiful acres of land. And we had goats, chickens, potbelly pig. We had everything. We had a barn. The only thing we didn't have was a good school for the kids to go to. But in the meantime, we enjoyed it while they were there. This was the milking stall. This was part of that property going to the back of it. We had this little valley and then another little valley, and I built a little meditation uh, hut along the stream that ran through it. Again, more of the property. There was a little pond down at the foot of the property here, on the next door's property. This is the girls with 2 little kittens that a neighbor gave to us that had been lost their mother, Rudy and Cream Puff. And this is Mira, Elizabeth, and Tricia. This is a bookcase that I built, separating the kitchen from kind of a library room. This was our potbelly pig, Oofy, having a snack from the refrigerator. Fortunately, she wasn't able to open the refrigerator. This was a little playhouse or a little doll house me and Lisa made for the kids for Christmas while we were living in Bangor. Here's Daddy with Elizabeth. Here's Tricia with a bouquet at Lisa. Lisa was great at making bouquets and flower arrangement. And here's Grandma Dottie holding one of the baby pigs from Uffy that he had. We had to sell all these little sausages. But these were Uffy's little pot-belly pigs. We hoped to make money, but by that time the bottom had fallen out of the market. And here's the beautiful face of Uffy. If you didn't know that that was a pig, you'd probably think it was an alien. Anyhow, this was one of the birthday parties in Bangor. Here's Robin with Melinda in Bangor. I think this might have been Thanksgiving. This was the barn in Bangor. I put up a greenhouse on the side of it and added on other sides to the barn. This was our first cornfield. You can see the school bus there in the distance on the neighbor's property, but this was our cornfield. Here's Elizabeth and Mira together. Probably one of the happiest pictures I've ever seen of them. This was our house in Bangor. That chair Lisa used to sit in all the time, it vibrated, and I'm afraid it caused a lot of trouble in the long run. This is again the house in Bangor, the barn. Here's Ben, who came out for Christmas, and his sisters. Here's Tricia, Elizabeth, Faye, and Holly, our friends from Encinitas. Again, here's the house that Robin and Pete had and that mom and dad bought the house as a getaway in Chicago Park. Here was a garden that Robin had put in and a horse stall. Unfortunately, my parents didn't live in the house, so that all kind of went to weeds. And this was in that house, I think around Christmas or a birthday party. We moved out of Bangor because the school was not good, and Robin and um, Ben had moved away too, and it was not a good place to raise the kids. So we sold the house in Bangor and moved up to a house in Paradise. And this is Steve Pearson with his wife and his two stepchildren, Aaron and Jason. This was the garden. We had a little creek that flowed through it, and we planted a garden there. This again is the house in Paradise. It's hard to believe. None of that is there anymore. The Paradise fire destroyed everything that you see in these pictures. We went back to look at it. It's just nothing but ashes. We were glad we were not living there when that happened. But this is the house we lived in. This is a trailer we put on the back of the property for a friend we thought was going to live there, but that didn't work out. But at this point, we realized we didn't have very many friends in Paradise that we could relate to on a spiritual level. And we were kind of deciding to try to move back somewhere near Encinitas. But this was the house. It was very nice inside. Here's Junie and Fred's truck. They came up to visit us. This is before we painted the house. We had a little bridge that went across the creek that flowed through the property. But it was always noisy there. We were on a little bit of a highway there. The traffic was going by, and somebody was always running a leaf blower, so it wasn't very peaceful and quiet there, even though it looked really nice. There's Claire and Mira. Once again, Mira and Elizabeth and Tricia at a birthday party. This is all in Paradise. And again, a birthday party. There's Thora. Here's the creek that flowed through the property. At this time, Robin and Ben had already gotten married, and they were living just about a mile from us in Paradise. Here is our dog and our pig. This is a birthday present Elizabeth was giving to me. Here's Elizabeth with Uncle Fred, Junie's husband. He was wonderful. They were always giving the kids special trips and doing things with them. He was a wonderful giving person. Here's Robin with Elizabeth. Again, this is all in Paradise. And here's a picture of the family, Fred, Junie, our kids, mom and dad. Back in Chicago Park, this is the house they had bought from Robin and Pete. And later, Junie and Fred got the house for a while. This is Thanksgiving. They dressed for the occasion in Paradise. There's mom and dad and a cake that Lisa probably made for them for a birthday. Mira and Elizabeth in Paradise. This is in Dottie's house in Los Angeles. This is her condominium there. That's in her living room. This is also in Dottie's house in Culver City. Here we are back again in Paradise. Lisa was in a hospital bed there recovering from surgery. And here's Dottie with a little gift we made for her with a potbelly pig and a planter. Dottie was always happy and thrilled with anything we made for her. She was a wonderful person and constantly giving. Again, a party Oh, this was a, um, town fair in Paradise where they had all sorts of a craft fair. This is a little motorcycle. I bought a Honda 90. I thought I could ride a motorcycle again, but as it turned out, it was too hard on my back. I had to turn around and sell it. This is Terry Dunn on the left, an old-time friend from Encinitas that came up and visited us. Tricia and Elizabeth, Halloween time, Paradise. And this is a play that Tricia organized and put on with the local kids. She taught drama. She had little posters put up to have kids come over, and she was teaching drama to them. And this was a little play she put on with the local kids. I'm really proud of her that she did this all together with some local children. This is a lake we went up to behind Paradise, up further in the mountains with Dottie one hot summer day. This is Lisa and the kids in a beautiful garden in Eureka, California. This again is back in Paradise. Junie and Fred, Robin there in the background. Here's Ben. This is right after he had married Robin. Looks a lot like Clint Eastwood. This is me with our kitty cats. There's John Hupp, looking sophisticated, ready to move on and become a millionaire. John also loved climbing trees and took the kids with him. This was a tree we had planted in front of our house. Here's a shirt that one of the kids made for me. Here's Tricia working in the kitchen in Paradise, making pies. This was back, I think, in Eureka, Tricia and Elizabeth. I wanted them to go. This is where Patty and Arby I lived that I shown in previous pictures. This is at the Awani Hotel in Yosemite. Again, in Yosemite, over standing on the Merced River, running through the Valley Park. This is our friend, our real estate friend, Galen, who showed us a million houses and other houses we might want to buy in Paradise. This was one of them in a beautiful, unique uh, fireplace room. We didn't get that house, but it was still fun to look at. It turned out it was a bad neighborhood. This was that house. Very unique. If it wasn't for the bad neighborhood, and I think it had a bad septic system too, so we didn't get it. Here's a portrait I did of Tricia. Finally, we sold the house in Paradise and moved back to Southern California to a place called Wildomar, which is right next to Temecula. And we got into what's called the farm, a mobile home park where you own the land. We were on a half acre of land, had a beautiful view from there. And the house was really nice, very roomy, but unfortunately, the school was horrible. Tricia got beat up at school. They didn't offer much for Elizabeth either. This was the living room in that house. We were thrilled at first until the kids started going to school, and the neighbor kids that were in there and everything were all delinquent, and we realized we couldn't stay there. The school was bad. The kids were bad. So anyhow, but it was a cute little farm. They had orange orchards and everything like that there, but it just wasn't a good place to raise the girls. So we sold that house and moved to Temecula. There we got into much better schools. This was the house we bought in Temecula on San Julian Street. This is the bare bones of it, and I proceeded to look at it as a blank canvas and began to landscape it. I built a room 2 rooms upstairs in the garage. It had a very high elevated ceiling. You can see all the growth of plants that I planted around the house. This was the backyard before I got my hands on it. Again, I'm looking out from the backyard, and then I gradually started planting trees in and around the yard, creating a park-like setting. Wolfie lived in the back corner of the yard. Now you can see what it turned into. I turned it into a regular, what some people would call an uncontrolled jungle, but I loved it. This was the room upstairs above the garage that I built. Again, upstairs, there was really a lot of space. I added about 500 square feet to the upstairs of the house, all illegally. I got no permits to do it and ended up having to tear it all down before we sold it. But anyhow, I enjoyed it while we had it. I built a room for Tricia upstairs, and this is downstairs in the same house at Christmas time. There's Dottie and Tricia and Elizabeth. I think that's Thora sitting next to Dottie on the couch. That's again the living room in that same house. Lisa in the kitchen. The bedroom that you saw that was upstairs is right above where Lisa's standing. This is me, Cream Puff, and Rudy and Lucy sitting on the steps behind me. This is downstairs. The garage was converted into a family room. Liz watching television. There's Tricia with her friend, Adrian. I don't know who the other girl is, and Elizabeth. That's downstairs. There's Kathy Spignazian, her mother, and her father, and another friend of ours. This again is one of the parties that we had there in that house. There's John Hupp and Claire and Mira, all much older, and Tricia and Elizabeth. And there's Emma, Robin and Ben's child. And there's Ben holding Emma. This was our introduction pretty much to Emma. The whole family was together. Robin, Ben, Claire, Mira, Emma, and Ben. This is Emma in Nepal. Where Robin had a special program for um, Tibetan women that she was developing. This is a birthday party that we had for Jimmy Judd, I believe, and invited all our old friends from Encinitas to the party. There's Faye and Holly, Gary Haymaker, Tricia, myself. There's Jimmy Judd in the middle, and then this is a dinner party with, it looks like, well, here's Lisa with Emma. Very proud grandmother. And here's Tricia with Emma, very proud aunt. Here's John doing caricatures of everybody at the party. Here's a caricature he did of me, a caricature he did of Elizabeth. John was great at this. A caricature he did of Tricia, looks like, and here he is at work doing caricatures. Claire and Mira in the front. Here's our friend Connie Katz, who had been a friend of ours for years, even before we got married. Connie was a friend of ours. Here again is Lisa with Emma. Here's Jimmy Judd and Thora. Jimmy had been a friend of Lisa's long before I'd even met Lisa. Here's Maha. I don't know what she's holding, and her children, Julian and Bernadette. I think this was a party for Maha. That's a painting I did of Sister Shanti in the background. There's Gary Haymaker and myself, and I think that's Alicia in the background. Here again is standing in front on the retreat grounds. There's Carol and Ron Shane with Maha again. Here's Gary with Faye and Holly. And we were having a dance, playing some music at the time. I took Maha and her two kids to Yosemite as a real special treat. This was shortly before poor Maha found out she had terminal cancer. I wanted her to have a special time, so we all went and drove all the way up to Yosemite for them to see it. They'd never seen anything like it. There's Bernadette and Julian, Tricia and Julian. They were living in Encinitas at the time, and then they eventually had to move to another place in, I think, Michigan, where Maha finally passed on. This is our friend's house. Marilyn, and this is Marilyn, myself. These are our friends that lived in Duluth right behind us. And their estate that they had in Duluth in Temecula. This is where we went to have our meditations. This is Tricia painting Marilyn's and Craig's son. Tricia did face painting as a job, and this was at their home in Duluth. They had acreage. That's Elizabeth with Adrian, which was Marilyn's daughter from a previous marriage. This was their house. We were there quite often. I liked to prune their trees, and we became really good friends. This was a pond that was being put in to the property, and this is the completion of the pond. Beautiful place. Unfortunately, their marriage ended in divorce. Won't get into details about that. Oh, this is Shanti, the girls who made the book or did the singing. That was the yurt where we meditated on the property. And we met there every Saturday morning and had a long meditation. And I think Monday night we also meditated there in the evening time. It was a really nice setup there. That's the inside of the yurt. And this is how they decorated it at Christmas time. So for several years, we would go there and have our meditations. Very beautiful setup. Then Liz took the horseback riding again in Duluth, along with Adrian, at a horse ranch that was not far from our friends Craig and Marilyn's estate. And so Liz got into horseback riding. Oh, this is us in Yosemite again with Dottie. This is having breakfast at the Ahwahnee Hotel. and again, at an reconstructed Indian camp in Yosemite at the Indian Museum. Again, Yosemite. We sold the house in San Julian and then um, for a fantastic deal, got 8 acres of land for $8,000. Dottie bought it. And then she sold us 1 acre, and we had this mobile home put on the property that overlooked the lake. Unfortunately, we were surrounded by neighbors with barking dogs, noise, unruly people, and the noise of the motorboats on the lake took away all the peacefulness that the pictures seem to imply. I built a couple of two-story houses right behind the house, the mobile home house. This was a view from the top of the hill on the 8 acres of land. Again, we were thrilled when we first got it. We just didn't realize how not comfortable the neighbors would be. I built these two houses, or you call them houses. Um, Tricia lived in the one on the right, and then the other one was just for fun to have company in. This was before the double wide trailer was moved onto the property. This was the property being prepared for the home to be put in. This is inside one of the little houses that I built. I think this was, yeah, this was Tricia's bedroom. And this is Elizabeth standing with Lucy behind her in the mobile home. And this is where Elizabeth came alive when she was singing the songs from The Little Mermaid. And we realized that we had an opera singer. Finally, on 2011, 9/11, we sold the house at Lake Elsinore. We wanted to get away from the neighbors and everything there and got this land up in Anza. Beautiful, far away from everybody. Home was only $65,000. It had been rehabbed a lot, totally fenced with a chain link fence all the way around it. There's Isabel laying on the couch. This is a porch that I closed in for our bedroom. And this was a little alcove for meditating in, just below the house among the oak trees there. Unfortunately, a lot of things were dying because of the drought. We only had 1 gallon a minute well, and it was all I could do to keep what trees it had alive. But anyhow, it was a great relief compared to where we were coming from. Peaceful, quiet. The property was really pretty. We lost all the pine trees due to the bark beetle because of the drought. That's the well there, only 1 gallon a minute, hardly enough to maintain much of anything. We built a little barn, and these were the goats that we had at the barn. Lisa was real glad to get goats again. And we found there's Uffie in the background, and there's Elizabeth with her first horse. I think it was Jedi was the name of that horse. And the property was so big, we actually we were able to clear it and had an arena for her to practice riding her horse in. Here's Elizabeth, who ran into brother Bimalananda at the local store. The SRF had a retreat there in Anza. Here we are having breakfast with Julian and Bernadette. Here we are at Jay Fishman's estate in the hills behind San Marcos and Escondido up in Valley Center. We ended up selling the house because the road was so rough going to that house on, Terwilliger. It was hurting Lisa's neck, and we moved up to Idlewild where we bought this house. This house had a beautiful view. The only problem with the house, it was very poorly insulated. It was hot in the summer and cold in the winter. And I think we wanted more land, and we still kind of remembered how much nice it was to have land around us that we did have in Anza. So we started looking around. But anyhow, while we were there, I thought we'd stay there. I built this greenhouse behind the house. And then I built a carport, and then I built a little meditation room above the carport. Downstairs, I closed in the underneath part of the overhanging porch and made a room in there. And here's John with a girlfriend. I can't remember her name right now, but this is our meditation group in Idlewild. That was one nice thing about Idlewild. We had a small meditation group that met every Thursday. And here we are with Herb Jeffries and his wife, um, Savannah, at the coffee house in Idlewild. And we became good friends with them. Here's Herb with Rainey and Lisa, you know her name. And Herb Jeffries with brother Bimalananda, who unknowingly grew up together in Michigan. Here's brother Brahmananda and Bimalananda. This is at our house in Idlewild. And then we had a meditation in our living room. Remember everybody saying, "Oh, you're not going to sell this house now that we've had this here." And I said, unfortunately, we did sell it. Here we are, Batista Anza. That was the name of the road. This was the house. We ended up moving back to Anza onto 2 acres of land with this mobile home on it. And for the first time, we were able to pay cash for the whole house and not have a mortgage. It had an old mobile home on it with beautiful flagstone patio all around it. This was the living room in the house. I really liked this house. Even though it was an old mobile home, it was very roomy and cozy on the inside. I ended up planting, I think, some 400 or 500 trees around the property. And the best part was we had a 50 gallon a minute well as opposed to 1 gallon a minute at the other property. I think this is Bogey, the cat Tricia had when she left Santa Cruz and brought home with her. These are all pictures of the property. We put in a raised bed garden and then totally screened it in. This is the front porch of the trailer that was there. It was just an old single wide with Isabel sitting on the steps. Here is the pool house that I built on. And there's the swimming pool, Doughboy pool that we added on to it. And this is the fifth wheel that Liz had lived in when she was going to college down in Hemet. And we brought that up there for Liz to stay when she was there too. Tricia had a clown job at at a restaurant in Temecula. Here we are at another birthday party. This is the pump house on the property where the well was, and we stored a lot of our movies. These were our kitty cats. I didn't know we had 2 black cats. Here's Melinda and Michael, and there is Robert, Lisa with the 2 little kittens, Nimmy and that were found on the road. and we brought back, they were just tiny little things. We probably spent $300 getting this little kitty back to health again. They were barely alive, and then when they were bigger, we gave them both to Tricia uh, to keep her company. This is a trailer we moved onto the property for Michael and Melinda to live in. Here's John and Elia on the right, Fred and Junie, and Elizabeth's friend, and a pond that I put in, also on the property. And this is a trailer we also moved onto the property for Ron and Carol Shane to live in. Here's Bogey. Um, he followed me all over the property until he passed on. This was a little shack on the property that I turned into a art studio for myself. This is the back of the trailer with the closed-in porch and then a screened-in porch, another angle. We had about 4 outside buildings on this property. I really liked it, was hoping to have a kind of an SRF community here, but unfortunately, the people that stayed with us were not of that um, locale. That was the little cabin that was on the property that I closed in for an art studio. This is a little bridge that I built over a little running stream that we had. This was a very fancy outhouse. No, we never used it as an outhouse. Oh, and this is our motor home that we got for $2,000 and drove it to the mother lode country and drove all around with it, drove it up to Lake Tahoe, drove it to Placerville. Actually, this was I think, our 25th wedding anniversary. We drove it to San Francisco, drove it through Big Sur, and it was our first real experience of motorhome living. This is at Brackney, where after we let go of the motorhome, we bought a trailer. Again, here's the trailer we bought. Here's up in the motherlode country with Melinda. And the trailer again, the motorhome wasn't holding up well. We thought we'd be better off with a trailer. Anyhow, we've since had what, 4 trailers and 2 or 3 motorhomes. Okay, flashing way back, this is Frida with Ben right after he was born. This was the trailer we lived in at the time in Ringgold, Georgia. Here's Steve Steve Pearson holding Ben. It's hard to believe Ben's almost 50 years old now. And then we moved out of that trailer and got land and I had this new double wide put on the property. Here's Frida with Ben sticking his tongue out. Here's Ben, a little red wagon that Gramps had made for him and that had sent to us. Me and Ben. Ben could probably pick me up now. Frida with Ben, the back porch of the trailer we had there. That was called Green Acres. Mom and Dad came out and visited us at our home. That would have been 1975, I think. This was a birthday party for Ben when he turned 3. Shortly after that party, Frida surprised me and asked for a divorce. Took me several years to get over that, but I'm so grateful for the wife. I would have never gotten the wife that I got now. Here's Gramps. One of the last pictures of Gramps before he passed on with Ben. Here's Ben back again in Ringgold on our property there, playing with his trucks. Here's Steve with Frida and my mother Christmas morning just before we broke up. Me and Ben Easter back home in Los Altos. Then I went back to Carrollton, Georgia to try to see if Frida and I could get back together again, but it didn't work out. By that time, we realized we weren't meant for each other. And then I moved back permanently, this time to Encinitas, into a townhouse there. Ben had a little garden in the backyard. This was a little go-kart Ben bought. I forget what he traded for, and then Ben would go visit Frida for a couple of weeks every summer. This was, one of those summers. This is Ben with a couple of friends that he met from Sunday school up at youth retreat in, the San Bernardino Mountains. Here's Ben with his Sunday school class on, the church that we had on, 2nd Street. Encinitas. Here's Junie, Ben, and Junie is holding Michelle, who has kids of her own now. Here's Maha, Bernadette. Here's Ben standing in the corner with Cheyenne and Trinity in front of our house on 2nd Street. Here's Ben and Tricia. Ben, Trish, and Elizabeth, and Lisa in Yosemite. These pictures are not all in great order, so they jump around quite a bit. Here's Ben with Grandma and Grandpa in their backyard on Los Altos Avenue. Here's Ben even several years older in their backyard. Here's Ben with his grandmother. Ben stayed with them for a while he was attending Foothill College. Here's Ben's half cousin, Chucky, and he was back in uh, Georgia visiting his mother, and that's Frida's second child. I can't think of the name. Drew. Here's Ben with Granny, two grandmas on the left and the right. Here's Ben, Robin, and brother Bhaktananda at their wedding. And here's Ben with Emma. He's reading to Emma. Here's Ben with Elizabeth, and I'm not sure where that picture was taken. This is Ben in Ben and Robin's house in Paradise. Here's Emma getting older very quickly. I believe that's still in Paradise. Steve on the right, me, and then Ben on the left. Here's Ben's and Robin's house in Anza, beautiful home that they got there. Tricia with her wonderful husband, Alan, in Tuscany. Tricia and her husband in Paris, in front of Notre Dame 2 days before it burned. Here we are at Tricia's wedding. And here's Tricia at her graduation from Santa Cruz. Again, graduating from Santa Cruz. I think these pictures were taken in Boulder Creek where we had her reception dinner. Here's Grandpa Haefner with his second wife, Irene. Again, these pictures are all taken in Boulder. I think it was Boulder Creek. No, not Boulder. I'll think of it. Tricia in Santa Cruz when she was still going to college. Tricia posing for the dress that she made for her graduation. Tricia with the two babies, Nimi and I forget the other kitty's name. Little fellow, we call him. This is our trailer in Anza before we had it repainted. Here's a painting, really nice painting Tricia did of Master with a tiger overlooking a moonlit lake. Tricia with her first automobile in Anza. Tricia picking apples from our tree in Anza. Tricia clowning around in Anza with grandma and her mommy. The two girls in grandma's kitchen in Culver City cooking a dinner. Both girls are excellent cooks. Tricia moving into a rented apartment in Santa Cruz with friends and furniture. These are Tricia with her friends. I don't know their names, but Tricia sure does. Here's Tricia with Joey, who she went to Europe with. And here's Tricia with her dad. I guess she does look like me. She does a lot better than I look. Here's Tricia at youth retreat. She was a counselor there. Everybody loved her. They were sad to see her stop going because she had to move on with school. Tricia dyeing her hair and Elizabeth dyeing her hair red. That was in Temecula. Again, Temecula. Two loving sisters, still to this day, loving sisters. So happy to see. Oh, going way back, a carriage ride in Julian with Tricia. Here's Maha, Tricia, Bernadette, and the baby must be Julian. Here's a playhouse I built for the girls when we were living in on Melba Street before we moved up to Northern California. Grandpa reading a book to Tricia. Tricia holding her baby sister, Elizabeth. Tricia with friends of ours in Encinitas. Tricia with a kitty. Tricia with two friends of ours, Sharon Ballard and her husband. Here's Tricia with at Mount Washington. Tricia in a swimming pool on 2nd Street, right across the street from the temple. This was our house for a year or two, right across the street from the Encinitas Temple. This is, I believe, right after Elizabeth was born. Here's Lisa becoming a proud mommy. Here's Lisa pregnant with Elizabeth, Betsy. And here's Elizabeth with her now present husband, Andrew, in Paris, in France at, garden, um, Monet's garden, that was it, I believe, yeah. These are model pictures of Elizabeth, one of our friends took of her. Here's Elizabeth after an opera performance and her friends, um, well, Tricia, you know his name, we were glad you didn't marry him, and then another fellow who came and went quickly. Elizabeth with, I think this is Elizabeth's first boyfriend, and I can't think of his name right offhand either. Elizabeth, I'll have to fill you all in on that. Here's Elizabeth up in Quincy at a horse ranch when we were living in Paradise. Here's Elizabeth at Fort Bragg riding a horse along the coast. Back in Temecula is where this picture was taken. I don't know if it's Elizabeth's birthday party or not. Elizabeth turning somersaults in the backyard in Temecula. Elizabeth again with Mira and her sister. Elizabeth. Elizabeth in the playhouse I had built for them when we lived on Melba, going way back again. Here's Elizabeth with Grandma Dottie wearing a Hawaiian shirt. And Elizabeth being washed in the sink. Lisa having a good time. She was such a cute, rubbery little baby. Lisa loved to carry Elizabeth around on her back. I think Elizabeth really enjoyed it. Here's our friend Connie holding Elizabeth. This is on Melba when we lived there before we moved up to Northern California. This was at the church in Encinitas. Um, probably a brother, Brahmachari Jeffrey, who baptized Elizabeth. He finally left too. He almost became Elizabeth's father-in-law. Here's a picture of Dottie and Deck when they got married. Here's a picture of Lisa with her sister and Dottie. Here's Robin with sister, and I can't think of the name of it. Robin when she was very young. Elizabeth, just before I met her, with Bodie, Trinity, and Wendy, and Duke, the baby. Here's Lisa's two favorite kitties for when she was growing up, Moo and Eat. This is Lisa's house in way up in around Palmdale. And Lisa with her horse and with her sister. Agua Dulce, that's where she was. Lisa grew up pretty much in Agua Dulce on 10 acres of land. This is Lisa with her dog. She had 25 cats and looks like 3 dogs here. Don't ask me to name them all. Lisa with her mom and dad and Grandma Ruth. Here's Lisa, our kids at Vasquez Rocks, which were right behind the property they used to own when they lived up there. Lisa with her friend. Lisa with one of their dear friends from the past. Lisa meditating. Her father took this picture. I did a painting of it. One of my favorite pictures. Here's Lisa and I in Florence on a bridge. And that's the end.